Is Ukraine continuing its advance beyond Klitschivka? And is Wagner returning to the battlefield? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's September 27th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, the changes to the front line are actually pretty sparse. The only notable one, in fact, is outside of Klitschivka here, where you can see this is how things were looking on the 24th, with elements of the 11th, the 102nd, the 4th, the 83rd, and an Akhmat unit, all trying to stabilize the front line along this rail line here that we've talked about, that it seems highly likely Russia's going to be using this rail line as kind of their defensive stand, linking the strong points of Kurdyumivka with this forested area to the north. But as you can see, it looks like not only are Russian forces beginning to withdraw somewhat. You can see many of these first forested regions are listed as contested, but you're watching these units pull back as well, which I think can be significant, right? We talked about the fact that Russia likely planned on digging in these positions and holding Ukrainian forces, but you can see that Ukrainian forces have continued to attack, forcing back Russian control in a number of areas. Obviously, some here in this northern corner of the windbreak, but also many of these first line windbreaks, and even in this case, the second line windbreaks have been at least listed as contested, which means that they probably aren't nearly as secure as we would expect. And when we see these units also conduct a withdrawal, you can also note there's not really great defensive spots here. There's a little bit of this hilltop, this ridge line that may prove a reasonable defensive position, though actually this may be a low point. But the fact that these units are all starting to draw back quite a ways says that probably Russia is assessing just where it wants to hold in this region, right? Opitna, the village here, Odravivka, God help me. These are probably going to be their next most likely areas they're going to try to hold. And as we've talked about, this route, I think it's the T513. This is a key route leading into Bakhmut, but also from Bakhmut to resupply forces on the defensive in this southern front. So when you see it, when you see Russian forces withdraw, it means that this area is going to become, movement along it is going to become even more restricted. Right now, it is within artillery range of Ukrainian guns. You can see just 4 kilometers, right? So a comfortable shot for a Leopard tank. Definitely a pretty easy run for a drone and for a artillery, almost comically easy to fire. You can see even if Ukrainian artillery was to be brought just to the edge of liberated territory, you could see that they would still be able to deliver effective fires onto this T13 highway. So T513. And so this control it's going to be hard for Russia to use this highway, at least in an unrestricted fashion, to supply its troops along the front lines and holding out in Bakhmut. So Russia's going to have to find alternative routes to get these troops the munitions that they need. These troops are going to have to find another place to establish defensive positions, which itself will be pretty tough. And all in all, the prospect of losing this major defensive line is going to be a serious problem for the already manpower-strapped Russian forces. When we look over at the combat map, you can see that there hasn't been a ton of activity, just a handful of Russian offensive actions, usually outside in the Donetsk area. Notable, Ukraine is asking families with children to evacuate from villages like Huliapole, Priobaz, Henka and Yahorivka. All right, probably in response to increased Russian combat operations in this region, or the potential of a Russian last gasp offensive staged in one of these two locations, right? Both of which Russia probably wants to do, right? They want to try to enclose or even encircle Ukrainian forces in this salient. Are you someone who drinks a lot of energy drinks? Well, energy drinks are super expensive. Believe me, I know. I used to just live off of energy drinks when I was in the military. But they're inconvenient. They taste gross. They are loaded with sugar. That's why I created Strike Gum. I worked with a manufacturer in Denver, Colorado, to basically get an entire energy drink in every single piece. That's 90 milligrams of caffeine, 100 milligrams of alpha GPC. That's as much as most energy drinks. And best of all, there is 0 sugar, just 10 calories per piece. So you're not going to get any of the massive sugar bomb that you would get if you were taking an energy drink. So if you're interested, you can go to strikegum.com. Best of all, 50% of the profits from this first production run, I'm going to be donating to Ukrainian charities that benefit civilians who've been injured or displaced by the conflict. So again, check us out at strikegum.com, where you can get a pack if you want to try it out, or an entire tray, right? Which, ends up 75 pieces per tray. You're getting the equivalent of one energy drink for 40 cents a piece. Thanks to the hundreds of people who've already ordered their Strike Gum, and the dozens of people who've already reordered their Strike Gum, even though we only launched a month ago. But it's a sign that we know people who try it love it. So, taking a look at the latest updates, actually, according to X, the rumor mill, again, this reports that there's even additional gains, that Russian forces are being pushed back even further from Klitschivka. These are sort of vague, but it sounds like about an hour ago, Ukrainian press officers announced continued advances somewhere in the Klitschivka and Drivka area, which, again, would line up with what we saw there, which is Russian forces withdrawing and Ukrainian forces moving into those positions. Now, one other thing that I thought was pretty interesting is that the Russian MOD is reportedly recruiting a lot of Wagner personnel for MOD-affiliated private military companies fighting in Ukraine. There's also been negotiations between Wagner leadership and the Russian National Guard, Rosguardia, but those agreements seem to have stalled concerning Wagner's independence and ability to operate collectively. Right. Some say that Wagner's still operating in Africa and Belarus. There's no plans to close the organization, but a number appear to have realized that being a Wagner soldier is probably not exactly a feasible or long career prospect, and many have left the organization purportedly, along with one of their senior commanders, Andrei Troshev, and joined the MOD-affiliated Radut and Volunteer Corps PMCs, and have already been redeployed back to Bakhmut. Milblogger said that Troshev is trying to recruit Wagner personnel in Belarus, Africa, and the Middle East for some of these MOD-backed PMCs. I think they're also tagged as Shoigoist or Storm. But this is just indicative of the fact that the MOD needs all the personnel it can get, including Wagner troops who they know are likely extremely unloyal to the Kremlin. The Kremlin, in their mind, betrayed them at every turn, and yet they are still so desperate for fighters that they are willing to bring these guys back into the fold. Anyway, that's all I had. Thank you so much to our Colonel tier members of Combat Vet News. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier members, and thanks to all the members of CombatVetNews.com. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.